We're used to thinking of movement as risky. Lifting, bending, twisting. Those are the motions we warn people about. We teach proper lifting techniques, we emphasize dynamic risk. But we don't talk enough about the other side of the coin. What happens when you don't move? Standing in one place for hours, sitting motionless at a screen, holding the same position with barely a shift. That's when stillness becomes the silent thief of health. Let's talk about Marisol. Marisol worked as a cashier at a large grocery store in Bogota, Colombia. Her station was fixed. The conveyor belt moved the items. She scanned and bagged, feet planted firmly on the ground. For 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, she stood in nearly the same position. The only motion was from her arms. At first, it felt like a good workout. A bit of soreness in the feet, but nothing major. By the end of her first year, things had changed. Marisol developed varicose veins in both legs, her knees ached constantly, her lower back throbbed, and worst of all, she had no idea that standing still could be the cause. Static posture, whether standing or sitting, cuts off circulation. It causes muscles to stiffen, joints to compress, ligaments to tighten. It sends the message to your body that movement is optional, when in reality, it's essential. In the Netherlands, a long-term study of retail workers showed that those in standing-only roles reported higher levels of back pain, lower limb fatigue, and even cardiovascular strain compared to their counterparts who had more freedom to move or sit. What's worse, the injury rate was higher among those who followed the rules but were not allowed to alternate posture. In static work, your body becomes a held position. It locks in, and when it locks in too long, damage begins. Now meet Peter, a CNC machine operator in Germany. Peter loved precision. He'd stand at his machine for long stretches, eyes focused, hands ready to adjust. He was praised for his attention to detail, but no one noticed that he rarely moved more than a few steps during his entire shift. After 3 years, Peter had developed joint stiffness so severe that he couldn't squat without pain. His hips were locked, his hamstrings shortened, and his lower back constantly flared. A physiotherapist told him, "You're not injured by what you're doing, you're injured by what you're not doing." The company brought in ergonomic consultants, anti-fatigue mats were added, tasks were split to allow movement breaks. And Peter began using a sit-stand stool to change position every hour. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the beginning of relief. Static strain doesn't discriminate. It affects office workers, lab technicians, assembly line staff, cashiers, security guards, teachers. Anyone who holds their body in one position for too long is at risk. In Ghana, a teacher stood for decades in front of classrooms with no chair, no breaks, and no schedule flexibility. Her feet became permanently swollen. She eventually required surgery for tendon damage in her ankles and knees. Her story became a case study in how even noble, low-risk professions can lead to chronic harm. And in Canada, a hospital orderly developed lower back and neck problems, not from lifting patients, but from standing outside operating rooms, waiting hour after hour to transport beds. Standing, waiting, watching. Or take the example of Nadia, a graphic designer in Milan. She sat for hours in a perfectly aligned, ergonomic chair, her dual monitors positioned just right, her wrists supported, but she rarely moved. She avoided interruptions. Her legs stayed crossed or still under the desk. Over time, her circulation suffered. She began experiencing numbness in her toes, stiffness in her knees, and tension headaches from the static position, all while thinking she was doing everything right. We're taught that rest is stillness, but ergonomic science tells us stillness is not rest. Movement is life. A Norwegian postal facility introduced short mobility breaks every hour, just 2-3 minutes of shoulder rolls, light stretches, or walking a few steps. The result? A 35% reduction in reported musculoskeletal discomfort within 3 months. In South Korea, a microelectronics company redesigned workstations to encourage subtle movement, footrests that encouraged rocking, chairs that promoted spinal microshifts, and workflow design that required standing, then sitting, then standing again. Productivity didn't drop, it rose. Meanwhile, in South Africa, a supermarket chain restructured shifts for checkout clerks. Instead of full-day standing, clerks alternated every 2 hours between standing and seated positions. They also implemented small posture reminders and dynamic stretching videos during break times. In 1 year, repetitive stress claims related to standing dropped by nearly half. In Australia, a mining administration office introduced standing desks, but with mandatory posture change guidance. Staff received gentle alerts every 45 minutes to switch between sitting, standing, and walking. The program was initially met with resistance, but after 3 months, 87% of staff reported improved comfort, and several who previously required physical therapy stopped treatment altogether. The key isn't to stand more. It's to move more. You need variation. You need motion. You need options. So how do we fight the hazards of stillness? We build movement into the workday. We educate workers on why shifting matters. We design stations that encourage posture changes, not discourage them. And we talk about it. We stop glorifying the idea of being able to sit or stand still for hours. We challenge it. We ask better questions. What's the longest stretch you've gone without changing position? How many times a day do you stretch, shift, or take pressure off your feet or spine? What would change if we normalize moving more without fear of being seen as lazy or distracted? Stillness isn't strength. Stillness is risk. It's cumulative. It's silent. And it's preventable. If your job keeps you in one position, share how you manage it. What works? What doesn't? What change made a difference? Because this isn't just about fatigue. It's about the health of our circulatory system, our nerves, our muscles, our future. Standing still shouldn't hurt. Let's rethink what rest really means. Stay moving. Stay flexible. Stay safe.